Then I heard him call out in a loud voice, "Bring the guards of the city here, each with a weapon in his hand." And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north. Where am I? Okay. Each with a deadly weapon in his hand. This is going to be this is very similar to the vision revelation of God or the living creatures calling out the judgment of destruction on the people. Very similar. Not the same, but very similar. With them was a man clothed in linen, so a 7th man, who had a writing kit at his side. They came in and stood beside the bronze altar. Now the glory of the God of Israel remember, that's that vision of that man-like being on the throne on top of the expanse, which the living creatures are holding up at their wings. So they're seeing the living creatures. We didn't describe them again, but he said back in chapter 8, verse 4, that he's seeing the same vision he had seen in the plane. So he's seeing the living creatures, he's seeing the wheels next to them, he's seeing their wings, and this expanse that they're holding up, and on top of that expanse there is a throne, and on that throne there is a being in the figure of a man. So that's what this is, like this being in the figure of a man that was sitting on the throne on top of this expanse, held up by the living creatures. Now the glory of the God of Israel went up from above the cherubim, where it had been. So now we've identified these living creatures as the cherubim, and moved to the threshold of the temple. He's getting ready to leave. He is gradually working his way out. He was supposed to be in the temple. He said the temple is where he would put his name. He himself was not and never was physically bound to the temple, but he said that he would put his name there. He would take up his residence for his name there, and he's getting ready to leave. So the glory of the God of Israel is leaving Israel. Then the Lord called to the man clothed in linen, who had the writing kit at his side, and said to him, "Go throughout the city of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it." And he's not literally going through and marking the forehead. This is all figurative. This is visionary. This is symbolism. Ezekiel's having a vision. There is no literal mark being put. Now, there may be a spiritual mark. We're going to see the mark idea again in Revelation. John's going to pick up this idea of people being marked. But there is not like a physical X or whatever on the forehead being drawn by this guy. As I listened, he said to the elder, and he's marking the ones who are righteous, the ones like Jeremiah, who would have been in this category, and Baruch, who want Jerusalem to do better than this, who want the people to turn back to God, who are grieved over what is happening. They're being marked. This is similar to what happened with the Passover, where the Israelites in Egypt were to put the blood on the door frames to their houses, and when the angel of death went through and he saw the blood on the door frames, he would pass over that house and would not enter it and kill the firstborn inside. In this case, they're being marked again for being saved in this judgment that is going to be inflicted on everybody else. So before the 6 men with the weapons can go through and kill everybody, this 7th man with the writing kit is going to go through and mark everybody's forehead that is to be preserved through this slaughter. As I listened, he said to the others, "Follow him through the city and kill without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter old men, young men, and maidens, women and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary." So we're going to begin in the house of God. Judgment begins in the house of God. So they began with the elders who were in front of the temple, worshiping the sun. Then he said to them, "Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go!" So they went out and began killing throughout the city. Now again, this is all visionary. At this moment in time, as Ezekiel is having this vision, the 5th day of the 6th month of the 6th year of their exile, there are not a number of people in Jerusalem dropping dead because an angel is going through and hacking them with a sword. Okay, that is not happening, literally. But he's been seeing this in a vision. So they went out and began killing throughout the city. While they were killing, and I was left alone, so they've all scattered, and Ezekiel's just standing there. I fell face down, crying out, "Ah, sovereign Lord, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel in this outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem?" He answered me. One of the jobs of the prophet was to make intercessory prayer. Abraham did this way back in Sodom and Gomorrah and asked God if he would judge the cities, if he could find, he got it down to 10 people, and they couldn't find 10 people. So he went, and then Moses interceded on behalf of the people of his day. This is one of the jobs of the prophet. Jeremiah was told not to do this. Now, Ezekiel hasn't been specifically told not to, but Jeremiah was. And Ezekiel is basically doing that here as he is watching this judgment on the people take place. He answered me, "The sin of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed, and the city is full of injustice. They say, the Lord has forsaken the land. The Lord does not see. So I will not look on them with pity or spare them, but I will bring down on their own heads what they have done." Then the man in linen with the writing kit at his side brought back word saying, "I have done as you commanded." Now that doesn't mean, again, this is not literally being taken place, carried out. It's a statement about the judgment that is to come. And it doesn't mean that everybody who dies in the Babylonian invasion is going to be a wicked person. Everyone who lives is going to be righteous. Where we found out in Jeremiah that wasn't the case. As we read Jeremiah in historical books, we found out that wasn't the case. So this is not a depiction of literally everyone who gets killed being the wicked and everyone who saves being the righteous. That is not what is happening here. So this is a message that's being communicated, but it's not being communicated through, it's being communicated through a vision, not through a literal event that is occurring in real time at this moment in time. I looked, and I saw the likeness of a throne of sapphire above the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim. He now knows that these living creatures are cherubim. He did not call them that in his first vision with them a year ago. But now that remember so cherubim, we've been hearing about these cherubim way back in Genesis, the beginning of Genesis. These were the creatures that were put in front of the garden to keep Adam and Eve from going back into the garden to eat of the tree of life. So we've been encountering this word and this concept all the way back to the beginning. And we read about how when they made the Ark of the Covenant, they made these cherubim figures that went on top of it, that had wings that stretched out to each other, that in some figurative fashion, the cloud representing God sat down on top of it as if it was his throne or his seat. And when they built the temple, they built two more larger cherubims to cover even the two cherubims that were on the Ark of the Covenant. In the tabernacle's curtains and the temple's walls, they also had cherubim depicted. Okay, when they made the curtains of the tabernacle and the walls of the temple, they even had cherubim figures somehow inlaid and inserted into the curtains and walls. But nowhere did we get a depiction of what they look like. Way back in Genesis, anytime from then all the way until now, we've just been hearing this term cherubim or this concept, but we have not gotten a depiction of what they look like until Ezekiel. And even Ezekiel, when he first saw them in the first vision in the beginning of the book of Ezekiel, he didn't recognize what they were. It's only now that he's in the temple in this vision that it occurs to him that these cherubim, the living creatures that he has been seeing, that these cherubim figures that were in the temple are what these things these are the things that those images are trying to depict. Whatever the depictions of them look like in the Ark of the Covenant, in the temple, and on the curtains, on the doorposts, whatever. However the Israelites made them look, that was just an imitation or a replication of the actual reality, which Ezekiel has now seen. And once he is in the temple area, it occurs to him that these beings that he has seen are, in fact, what the depictions of the cherubim in the temple were supposed to be trying to depict. But the earthly imitation, of course, is far less than the heavenly reality. But that is why he now suddenly realizes that these are the cherubim. Well, see, now he was a priest, and he had been taught, he would have grown up preparing to enter the service of the priesthood his entire life. So he would have been completely familiar with the images of the cherubim that would have been in the temple. But he only now, when he's seeing a vision of the temple and the cherubim there in the temple at the same time, only now is he realizing that those figures that he has seen decorate the temple all his life are supposed to be depicting these living creatures that accompany God everywhere he goes. Now the cherubim, wait, where am I? I should back up. I looked, and I saw the likeness of a throne of sapphire above the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim. The Lord said to the man clothed in linen, "Go in among the wheels beneath the cherubim." So the whole thing is here. The whole chariot is here. You have the throne, you have the expanse, you have the likeness on top of the throne, you have the cherubim, the living creatures, and you have their wheels. So it's all here. And the Lord said to the man clothed in linen, "Go in among the wheels beneath the cherubim. I'll fill your hands with burning coals from among the cherubim and scatter them over the city." And as I watched, he went in. Now the cherubim were standing on the south side of the temple where the man went in, and a cloud filled the inner court. That means God's presence is filling the court. We saw this happen back when they dedicated the tabernacle at the end of Exodus. We saw it happen again when they dedicated the temple at the beginning of 2 Chronicles and 1 Kings. That the glory, the cloud represents the presence of God, and when it fills the tabernacle or the temple, no one else can enter it until the cloud disperses. The cloud filled the temple, and the court was full of the radiance of the glory of the Lord. The sound of the wings of the cherubim could be heard as far away as the outer court, like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. When the Lord commanded the man in linen, "Take fire from among the wheels, from among the cherubim," the man went in and stood beside a wheel. Then one of the cherubim reached out his hand to the fire that was among them. So there's a fire somewhere in the midst of this thing. We saw the fire associated with them in the first vision when they were coming to him in the clouds of a thunderstorm. Somewhere, now we haven't read about a thunderstorm depicting that accompanying them here in Jerusalem, but there's some kind of fire burning in the midst of their wheels somehow. Then he took up some of it and put it into the hands of the man in linen, who took it and went out. Under the wings of the cherubim could be seen what looked like the hands of a man. So they have the feet of a calf. We read about that earlier. And they have the hands of a man. I looked, and I saw beside the cherubim 4 wheels, one beside each of the cherubim. The wheels sparkled like chrysolite. As for their appearance, the 4 of them looked alike. Each was like a wheel intersecting a wheel. We already talked about that when we read about it the first time. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the cherubim faced. The wheels did not turn about as the cherubim went. That's an indication that this chariot can go anywhere. It's not limited to just going in one direction or another. It can go any direction. The cherubim went in whatever direction the head faced, without turning as they went. Their entire bodies, including their backs, their hands, and their wings, were completely full of eyes. We didn't see that last time. The wheels had eyes on them last time, but in the previous vision, Ezekiel either didn't notice or didn't mention, or maybe they didn't have eyes at that time. Yeah, these are not physical beings, and I don't think we should thoroughly assume that their appearance is fixed into being a certain thing all the time. I think they're described differently each time we see them, and I think that's a reflection of how they have no fixed physical appearance because they're not physical beings. Their entire bodies, including their backs, their hands, and their wings, were completely full of eyes, as were their 4 wheels. I heard the wheels being called the whirling wheels. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face was that of a cherub, the second the face of a man, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. Now previously we had the 4 faces, and one of them was described as being an ox. I don't know why Ezekiel calls that one a cherub now, and last time he called it an ox. I don't know why that is. As for why these particular animals or creatures are depicted, and we saw that again when we were looking at Revelation. In Revelation, they don't have 4 faces. It's just that each of the 4 living creatures looks like one of these 4 things. I think the reason for that is that by these 4 beings together represent like the sum total of the creation that God made, the life of creation that God made. You have man, of course, the peak of creation. Then you have the ox, which stands for the domestic animals, the domestic creation. The lion, which stands for the wild animals, the wild creation, and the eagle, which stands for the birds of the air, and probably also for the fish of the sea, because we read back in Genesis that they were both made on the 5th day, whereas all the land-based animals are made on the 6th day. So that probably the images of these living creatures are probably meant to depict the entirety of the living parts of God's creation. One thing that we've seen before, we saw it from the very beginning, we're going to see it again emphasized here in Ezekiel, is that God's desire is for his creation to live. Okay? His desire is for the things that he made to grow and live and be plentiful and abundant. And that includes man. Man is the centerpiece of his creation, but it includes these other things too. You know, even at the end here, when we get the vision of this great and glorious future temple, this temple is still to be decorated with images of palm trees. Okay, this idea of this garden imagery is still present. It always has been. He made the world originally as a garden. That's the image we first get portrayed of it in Genesis 1 and 2, is that he made the world as this garden. In Ezekiel, we even in the temple portrayed in the vision at the end of Ezekiel, we see an image of this combination of human life and plant and animal life. At the end of Revelation, we see again this garden and these trees on either side of this river that flows through the city. So God's intent from the very beginning has always been for his creation to live. I think you see that reflected in these living creatures, these cherubim, which are depicted in the form of different parts of creation, and they're called the living creatures. Then the cherubim rose upward. These are the living creatures I had seen by the Kibar River. When the cherubim moved, the wheels beside them moved. And when the cherubim spread their wings to rise to the ground, the wheels did not leave their side. When the cherubim stood still, the wheels also stood still. And when the cherubim rose, they rose with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in them, the wheels. Then the glory of the Lord departed. So he's leaving again. He's already left the inner part of the temple and stood over to the side. Now he has departed from over the threshold of the temple and stopped above the cherubim. While I watched, the cherubim spread their wings and rose from the ground, and as they went, the wheels went with them. They stopped at the entrance of the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of the Lord was above them. The glory of the God of Israel was above them. So they're getting farther and farther away. Every step, every time we depict them moving, they're moving slightly farther away from the temple. These are the living creatures I had seen beneath the God of Israel by the Kibar River, and I realized that they were cherubim. So he didn't realize that when he first saw them. He didn't realize that these beings that he saw in this vision were the things that the images in Jerusalem, which the Israelites were told to make, were trying to depict. But when he saw them in the temple in Jerusalem in this vision, when he saw them all together, he realized that that's what that was. Each had 4 faces and 4 wings, and under their wings was what looked like the hands of a man. Their faces had the same appearance as those I had seen by the Kibar River. Each one went straight ahead.